Dr. Michael Gilligan has served as president of the Henry Luce Foundation since January 2003. From 1998 to 2003, he directed Luce Foundation's theology program. Before coming to the foundation, Michael served as Director of Accreditation and Leadership Education for the Association of Theological Schools in the United States and Canada. It is my privilege to have known Michael Gilligan and worked with him on various things as both colleagues and friends for a number of decades now, going all the way back to when I was a new dean in Chicago and he was the Director of Accreditation at the Association of Theological Schools, and kindly helping me and my colleagues find our way through what was my first accreditation process. Over the years since then, I personally have benefited from and enjoyed immeasurably Michael's wide-ranging wisdom, thoughtful creativity, and his vision, which is a product of both his creativity and his wisdom, formed as they are by careful study, experience, and prayerful reflection on experience. As CEO of Luce, Michael thinks about many things in many different arenas and facets of life. Happily, one of the things that he and his colleagues consistently think about is how best to nurture academic and community work in seminaries and beyond that helps religious communities and the relationships and mutual understanding between them thrive. Hartford Seminary and the Luce Foundation have partnered over the years in a number of ways in this area, and ways that have greatly enhanced and deepened the interfaith work that we do here at Hartford Seminary. We are grateful to Michael for his leadership and grateful to the foundation for the work it does and helps us do. It is a pure joy, Michael, to have you here and to have you see what you have helped create. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Gilligan.
Good afternoon, you all. You can hear me across the rain? My grandma, I wasn't going to tell you this, okay? At family weddings, my grandmother would wait by the door as the bride came out, and she would say, "Happy is the bride the sun shines on." But on given days, she was able to adjust her message and say, "Happy is the bride the rain falls on." And so happy are you graduates who are well watered today, plants who can endure this. Thank you, Heidi, for that very kind introduction. It's high risk to be introduced to someone who has known you for decades, as she said. And thanks for the generous invitation to participate in these commencement exercises at Hartford Seminary. I'm especially grateful to be welcomed by a longtime friend, but also to all of you who welcomed me to this beautiful place now for many years. What an honor it is for me to be with you. First, and really most important, let me say congratulations to the graduates. You've waited a long time for this day, I know, and I celebrate with you the fulfillment of dreams that you've held also for a long time. Is Kaiser here? Kaiser, you've been waiting for a dream too. Is everything okay? Great. Kaiser's family is expecting the birth of a baby anytime now. And I hadn't seen him. I wanted to make sure. For all of you, for accomplishments that are celebrated here at Hartford Seminary, but accomplishments that preceded you here and that will go with you beyond, I salute them. At its best, a seminary is a place that always exists for folks and brings folks to it in response to a calling. Thank you, graduates, for your faithfulness to that sense of calling. Not just to come here to gain a credential, nor to accumulate some learning for your own sake or for the marketplace, but really to grow in knowledge of God, the merciful and compassionate, and to respond in all the different forms of service that your knowledge of the Holy One surely inspires. The congratulations really are yours, but you share them, I know. And so let me extend them on your behalf to your families, who also inspired and supported you. To your teachers in the seminary community, who shared in your growth. And to the mosques, synagogues, churches, hospitals, civic organizations, museums, and more, who have accompanied you along this way. As Dr. Mansour and Dr. Hatzel both said, you know that the Luce Foundation, where I work today, has long ties to Hartford Seminary. Our foundation was created in the 1930s by the founder of Time magazine, Henry Luce, and he chose at that time to create the foundation in honor of his parents, who had served for more than 30 years as missionary educators in China. When he returned to the U.S. in the late 1920s, Henry Luce's father, Henry Winters Luce, was named a professor in the Kennedy School of Missions here at Hartford and taught here until his retirement in the mid-1930s. Having gone to China as a Christian evangelist in 1897, he came to cherish there other religious traditions about which he had known really next to nothing. And he accepted Hartford Seminary's hospitality in his last years of teaching because he found this seminary uniquely engaged with the Muslim world. The Luce Foundation stayed in touch with Hartford Seminary through the years in more ways than our founder's father, always admiring the seminary's role in the world. In the early 1970s, when the seminary went through a fundamental restructuring and rethinking, we watched and applauded that effort. The forerunner, really, of new models, new strategies, even new architecture for theological education. When the Abrahamic Forum was first launched in the 1990s, you all turned to us, asking us to join you with funds to support that effort. In the building of a faculty and student body ever since, perhaps the most sophisticated and most thriving of seminaries that today seek to prepare leaders from multiple traditions for service in a religiously diverse society. Enough about our history. Let's get back to talking about you. 2 weeks ago, 10 of your graduating classmates met me for lunch here, across the walkway, to talk about that experience. James Lucier described his years here, a place he had never expected to enroll, as a joyful ride. When I asked the graduates what I should hold up today, what I might celebrate, there were two responses over and over. One was your gratitude for excellent faculty who challenged you, who opened your eyes to new possibilities, new ways of thinking, who understood that you were adults and that you were their fellow learners, who were flexible about your special circumstances and who supported you when the going got tough. The other message that I heard was the joy you had found in getting to know other students who were really different from you, students who helped you to explore their identity by breaking it open for you and helped you then to understand your own. One graduate, Annalike Schnauer, told us a story about being in the operating room where she worked as a nurse for many years, and said that there was such a hierarchy in the operating room, and that really only one voice mattered, and the rest were subsidiary to that one voice. She said that she had found at Hartford Seminary something very, very different, that every voice matters here. I heard from a number of people that the defining course was the required one, Dialogue in a World of Differences. Rightly so, that the name of that course serves as an emblem today of Hartford Seminary, and it's the emblem, the challenge, and the practices of dialogue in a world of difference that you'll carry forth from here. A few days before I met your classmates, I was in Washington for a conference on interfaith studies, and I heard Yale professor Miroslav Wolf talking. For interfaith work to be successful, he insisted it requires two kinds of recognition. Recognizing that the other really is other than you, and recognizing that with dignity, and then recognizing both the distinctiveness and legitimacy of another's claims. His brief statement about these two kinds of recognition matched what your classmates described about their years at Hartford Seminary. Rich, real encounters that allowed you to see the world deeply through others' eyes. For 80 years, the Luce Foundation's focused on equipping leaders, and we've learned that three ingredients are especially important today. One of those is learning in a diverse cohort, something that's unusual in our day when people specialize very early. And it's too often missing from our national life, where we listen to only people who are the same as we are, who hold our values, and find ourselves living in an echo chamber. A second trait of leadership development is that we need to move beyond the simplicity of binary comparisons, talking about the US and China, Islam and Christianity, us and them, to an appreciation of complexity as the real condition in which we live. And finally, the third component that we've seen over and over is a lasting humility, a belief that we learn more than we teach, no matter what accomplished teachers we are, and that we've received more than we will ever be able to give. These three ingredients I learned from talking with you have been critical for you too, in shaping your own leadership, which we celebrate today. Let me talk for just a couple minutes about this crazy time we live in before we conclude. What a time, you know? There has probably never been a moment when we had more capacity for connectedness. I sat in my car at that filling station down by the traffic light and checked in with people who were working on 3 continents on my iPhone. This is a moment of extraordinary connectedness. And at the same time, for most of us, we experience in daily life a real sense that our communities and our connections are breaking down. The current political campaigns, in which I will name no one, but the current political campaigns, amplified by our 24/7 new media, are a sign of the deep divisions and the deep divisiveness in this land of ours. We're reminded every day that our civic discourse is polarized and that our institutions, national, local, secular, religious, are fractured. In her inaugural address as president of Swarthmore College a couple years ago, the theologian Rebecca Chopp described ours as an age of clamor, when it's hard to hear voices of reason and hope. This is a moment when we have more need and probably more opportunity for boundary crossing than at any time probably in human history. But faced with what seem to be intractable conflicts, many folks find themselves wanting to withdraw into themselves. to stay in the car or the cell phone just a little bit longer, to return to nativism in our national life, to withdraw from a world stage, to walk away from anybody who looks or seems different. At the same time, interestingly, after decades, perhaps centuries, of believing the secularization hypothesis that our world was going to become, after the Enlightenment, more and more secular, religion would be more and more private, we seem to have arrived at this moment of breakdown at a new place, when religious voices are heard in new ways in the public sphere, when there's serious talk about and respect for the public significance of theology and a lived religious experience. Honestly, I think there's an upside and a downside both to this new situation. It's thrilling on the one hand to hear religious messages, religious voices in the public square, but it's threatening too for us to learn to exercise that well, because strident claims may deepen rather than reconcile public contests. A few weeks ago, on the Sunday before the New York primary elections, one of the presidential candidates, one that I admire, by the way, spoke in 5 African-American Protestant churches in Brooklyn, where I live. Coming to the pulpit in each of those churches in very different neighborhoods, those churches are the very heart, often, of those troubled communities. The candidate began the same way at each of the 5 churches. This is the day the Lord has made. And the congregation in those churches roared back, "Let us be glad and rejoice in it." Initially, hearing clips from those 5 churches that Sunday night, I was delighted by the optimism, by the raising of the hope of the community. But as I heard it the 5th time, something about it, about one of my really favorite lines ever, began to trouble me. "This is the day the Lord has made." That's a claim, I'm afraid, that carries a risk of personalizing. It carries a risk of triumphalism. This is the day the Lord has made for me. This is the day the Lord has made for my cause. This is not the day the Lord has made for you or for them. It's just a quick glide downhill to a candidate claiming God's special favor. And that's risky. It strikes me that most of you are engaged in already or will be engaged in something that you think of as a ministry. Ministry can carry some of the same risks, I'm afraid, as political campaigning. In our very effort to draw near to folks, in our very effort to appeal to them, I can too easily lose my footing, becoming self-important, righteous, hierarchical, rather than staying faithful to service and compassion that are central to leadership in all our traditions. This is not about a leader's entitlement, nor yours, that we celebrate today. This is about the capacity for empowerment, for empowering the very folks who call upon and desperately want your leadership. The night before last, I was privileged to meet and to spend the evening with the First Lady of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, Ruhollah Ghani, who, being honored in New York, said that she was humbled in her role as First Lady in Afghanistan to speak in struggling people's names, making waves, which she has, for those who are too beaten down to try for themselves. But she does it, she says, day after day, in the hope that someday her efforts will allow them to claim their voices. So let's listen to the line again. This is the day the Lord has made. Yeah. We live in God's time. These are all days that God has made. And if we believe in the goodness of the Almighty's creation, what's our obligation? Believing in the goodness of creation, what is our opportunity? Believing in that goodness in this day, what is our calling? Years ago, after living with profoundly disabled adults in one of the Luce communities, the Dutch theologian Henry Nouwen described ministers as women and men without power, who walk in the name of God and often find God when they least expect. That's been your experience here, I think. The surprise encounter, the serendipity, that all of a sudden represents for you a change in your life's trajectory. When I talked to 10 students, at least 8 said, I thought I had come here to do X, but then I discovered Y. Where else might you have known this chance to rethink your trajectory in a world of difference? I don't know. There are such places, I'm sure, but today I'm glad that Hartford Seminary was here for you and that you've embraced so powerfully and so generously what Hartford had to offer you. Here's my final advice, and it really is, and it's only a couple of sentences. Okay. If you try to carry on this mighty work that you began here, or that this has fortified you for, if you do try to carry on this work alone, you're going to be discouraged and lonely. It's the season when Christian people find themselves in company with the disciples of Jesus in those dark weeks after his violent death, when they found themselves desperately alone. But we need not only think about that comparison, we can call on the African proverb for some wisdom about not living alone. If you want to go fast, African folks in Central Africa believe, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. From this place, on this day the Lord has made, set out together with my congratulations, the promise of my prayers, with my thanks. May the Holy One continue to bless all your hopes and your endeavors. Thank you.